Hi, everyone. My name is Mustansir. I'm a first-year medical student and someone who was raised deeply in faith. And today, I want to talk to you about the fascinating yet often contentious relationship between faith or religion and science. Before I start, I do want to provide a small disclaimer. This talk solely reflects my personal experiences and beliefs. It is not meant to challenge someone else's beliefs, someone else's faith, or impose my beliefs onto anyone else's. My goal for this talk is to share my journey and hopefully by the end of it, invite you to consider some new perspectives. So growing up, I was raised in a very traditional Islamic household. My parents were devout practitioners of Islam, and for the first 10 to almost 12 years of my life, I went to a religious Saturday school every week. And from a young age, because of that, I learned to pray 5 times a day. I learned to read and memorize the Quran. I went to the mosque for community events and for auspicious religious nights. And perhaps like most children, you see something, you hear something, you learn something, and you accept it without any further questioning. And that's what I did. So immediately, throughout my entire childhood, religion really became a big part of it. And then, bam, science entered my life as I entered high school. And immediately, it was like a shock. From courses like biology, chemistry, physics, social science courses that I took in grades 9, 10, 11, 12, it was an entirely new and different perspective, something that I had not been previously exposed to. And immediately, the entire discipline of science actually resonated with me for a few different reasons. Firstly, it felt logical. To me, science was like a puzzle coming together. There were facts. It was objective. It was things you could see right in front of you. You could analyze it. You could process it. You could see the results. In contrast, religion, as I had been learning it, felt a lot more abstract. Things that you couldn't necessarily see right in front of you. And it relied a lot more on just believing rather than processing and analyzing. And on top of that, science also connected with me because it was everywhere. I was very privileged to grow up in this first world country of Canada, and science kind of forms the backbone of most, if not all, major industries, entertainment, technology, transportation, communication, medicine. Science plays a role in all of that. And in contrast, the religious community that I'm a part of is the Dawoodi Bohra Muslim community. It's a specific division of Islam. There are 1 million members across the entire planet of this community. And out of 8 billion human beings, that's around, if not less than 0.01% of the entire world's population that have the exact same beliefs that I do. So comparing that with science, it was almost like no contest. Science was so much easier to relate to and to connect with. And so, to me, this tug of war really started to become really prominent between religion and science. And I started asking myself, could I accept one of these without completely rejecting the other? To make matters more interesting, the high school I went to was actually a Catholic institution. And there, it's required for all students to take a religious course in each of the 4 years. And these courses, much like the way I was brought up with my Islamic beliefs, were often rooted in the unknown, and they emphasize personal connections with God. And I was hoping that amidst this dilemma that I was having between religion and science, that I would hopefully find some answers in one of these two courses, religion or science. And maybe these courses would explain or look into how the two faiths, or how the two disciplines, could be connected. And that never really happened. And so what ended up happening was the scale in my mind ended up really tipping in favor of science. And religion kind of faded into the background of my life. Then something happened. In 2021, this is a year or so after COVID-19 had taken a stranglehold on our entire world, I went on a trip with my mother to the city of Karbala, which is in the country Iraq. And there I visited a mausoleum, which is sacred to a lot of Muslims around the world, but specifically those a part of the Dawri Bohra Muslim community. But what this trip did for me was provide a gateway for religion to come back into my life. And it showed me that perhaps religion can exist alongside of science. The following year, I was on another trip, and I was attending this 10-day religious holiday in London, England. And while I was there, I was attending a variety of sermons that were being hosted. One of these sermons broke down a famous quote that comes from the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. In Arabic, the quote is as follows: طَلَبُ الْعِلْمِ فَرِيضَةٌ عَلَى كُلِّ مُسْلِمٍ. The English translation of that is, seeking knowledge is an obligation upon every Muslim. Now, I had learned about this quote way back when in my Saturday school days, and I learned the Arabic version, I learned the English translation, and that was it. I didn't think anything else of it. The person who was giving the sermon broke this quote down and said, surely, if this quote came from the Prophet Muhammad, who was a spiritual image and spiritual figure, why would he say knowledge as such a general term? Why would he not emphasize religious knowledge, spiritual knowledge, Islamic knowledge being obligated for every Muslim? And the interpretation I was given, which still sticks with me today, was that you should seek the knowledge of this world to excel in this world, and seek spiritual knowledge to excel in the world you are going to. That's why knowledge is being used so generally here. It's not meant to emphasize one or the other. You're meant to pursue all forms of knowledge. Knowledge of this world, which is not just limited to science, that will have its benefits in its own ways, and spiritual knowledge will have its own benefits as well. Now, being the curious individual that I am, I wanted to take it a step further. I'd seen these connections within Islam and between Islam and science, and I was like, does this apply, or is this documented in any other faiths? And to my surprise, most, if not all, faiths show a connection between religion and science. And if I were to talk about all of them, that would have to be another TED Talk entirely, unfortunately. But I want to highlight two in particular here. On the left here, on my left, your right, is a statue of a famous Jewish philosopher, Maimonides. And he devoted a large part of his life to looking into the boundaries and the connectedness of religion and science. And from one of his works, this is a paraphrased quote, he says, the more we understand nature and science, the more we appreciate the Creator. To me, what this quote meant was that rather than thinking of nature as something that is entirely rooted in religion, like Mother Nature or a God that's created everything around us in terms of nature, and rather than thinking of science as something that is solely done by humans and is objective and is based on facts, we should appreciate that nature has scientific ties as much as science have religious ties. And if we can come to this understanding and accept this duality, we can appreciate the Creator not only from a religious sense, so not only just the Creator like as in God or multiple gods or multiple higher power beings, but also the Creator from a scientific sense, creators of scientific theories, philosophies, principles, and laws. So much like the previous quote I shared from the Prophet Muhammad, this quote kind of emphasized to me that pursuing both forms of knowledge in science and religion was key to understanding the truth behind each of them. The other discipline I want to highlight is Buddhism, and this quote that comes from the Buddha himself. He says, do not believe in anything simply because you have heard it, but after observation and analysis, when you find that anything agrees with reason, then accept it and live up to it. When I first read this quote, I honestly thought I was back in my science classroom. This was being given by one of my teachers, because it seemed like it was directly rooted in very fundamental scientific principles. Observation, analysis, recording, acting. But I realized that not only was this coming from a spiritual figure like the Buddha himself, but I had applied these same principles in my own life. My trip in 2021 to Karbala, Iraq, in 2022 to London, England, the research I had done to see the connectedness of religion and science between other faiths. All of that was observing, it was analyzing. So, in this beautifully ironic way, I had used fundamental scientific principles to allow religion back into my life and to have it be at the same level as science. And so, with the scale in my mind, it started to balance out once again. Now, this was all my past experiences. What does this look like now? How is this duality between religion and science taking center stage in my life? And it's happened so in a variety of ways, but one that I want to highlight is time. Growing up, learning to pray 5 times a day, fasting during the month of Ramadan, I accepted all of these things, as I mentioned before, without question. And I knew, and I still believe that to this day, that these will all have benefits at some point in my life, maybe in the near future, maybe later on. But what I didn't know until very recently was that these fundamental religious principles and beliefs actually have implications in my personal, academic, and professional life. Managing your time, setting goals, being able to pray at certain times during the day is consistent with completing tasks by a certain deadline. Fasting during the month of Ramadan and maintaining discipline is consistent with juggling numerous tasks, which for me as a medical student is honestly is one of the fundamentals of what I do each and every day. And so it is through religion that I learned these vital life skills. And I saw that they have implications way beyond just the spiritual realm. And on the topic of time, religion taught me to take time for myself. The same way many people turn to exercise or to music or to hanging out with friends or going for walks to take breaks from their professional or academic lives, religion was my getaway. And every time I turned to it, I felt that I was able to come back with a new introspective lens on my own life and come back a better version of myself, which in my pursuit of science and medicine has been absolutely vital. And now looking towards the future, I want to talk about how I've envisioned religion and science coming together in my future practice. And it revolves around the concept of humility. Let's say I'm a surgeon and I'm operating on a critical care patient. Me and my team, we do everything right. The patient on their end, they do everything right. But yet, after it's all said and done, the patient is unable to make a full recovery and they unfortunately pass away. When this happens, or if this were to happen, I will be able to accept that this, at this moment in time, may have been the act of a higher power being. Now, let me be clear. This is not an excuse for failure. This mentality is not an excuse for me to have lower standards in my practice. But let's face it, no human on this planet has lived forever. And so no matter how much knowledge I may acquire, no matter how much power and prestige I may acquire, giving and taking life, that won't always or entirely be in my control. And instead, I should focus on maintaining humility and approach each and every day of my practice, trying to do the little things to make people's lives better each day, each week, each month, and every year for the rest of my life. That's how religion and science will dictate the way I practice medicine. And so that brings me to today. I'm a first-year medical student at UBC, a proud wearer of those bright yellow neon green backpacks, and an active member of my religious community as well. And so to conclude, I want to share with you this image of a comic that I adapted from online, and also ask you a question. The image says, we need science to understand the universe, and religion to guide our way within it. So, if you, in your own life, have felt this cognitive dissonance between religion and science, take a moment and ask yourself, are they always entirely different things? Or could they just be two different ways of explaining the same truth? Thank you so much.